And yes, we are live. Hello and good day, everyone. I'm super excited to have here with me someone amazing, someone special. Can you hear me? My name remains Ayo Jackson, and I have here with me the amazing Carole Stone. Hello, Carole. Good morning.
Lovely welcome.
It's so good to have you here today. I am super grateful to know that I can have this conversation with you, especially because I know that you are a grandmother. I will not want to take too much of our time. I would like you to introduce yourself. But before then, I would like to do the acknowledgement of country, if you don't mind. Okay. So today, I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the Ghana land, and I'd like to pay my respects to all the elders, past, present, and emerging. And it's on this land that we are having this conversation. It's such a pleasure. So this podcast is generally for multicultural parents living in Australia, and it's a way of supporting parents, helping us integrate into the society and also know how to do the job of raising our children better. I know that you have been in Australia. I would like you to tell us about yourself um, and what your parenting journey has been like.
Okay, so given that I'm getting old, it will be quite a long story. So I haven't always lived in Australia, though I did come from England with my parents when I was 7 years old in 1966. So we had a big 6-week journey on a boat with 6 children and my mum and dad. And I think my childhood background is very much what has influenced my parenting today and still does. And I think that's something that will flow across what I talk about today, because I think our children learn very much from us, and what they see is what they do. And the most important part of our children's growth and development is how we build our relationships with them, especially relationships of trust and respect and things like that. And I think from a very young age, because I was the eldest child with 5 other siblings, I already started very young to do things to, help out my mom and dad. Just nothing, no big jobs, but we always did help out. We didn't have a lot of money in our family, but we always were able to find things to do that perhaps didn't cost a lot of money. My mum was very good at doing crafts and activities, and my dad is also was into sports a lot. So my brothers and sisters played a lot of sport. So coming a long way on from there, as a parent myself now, like I said, I've been very influenced by my own parents. My parents didn't use physical discipline even back in that, 50 years ago, but I can remember one time I had a smack, and I remember that, and I never forget it.
Yeah.
And the same with my siblings. But I often think about what it was that made me do the right thing. If my mum said don't do something, or my dad said don't do something, generally I did it. When I was a teenager and I went out, they said come home at 11. Then I made sure that I came home at 11.
Wow.
Because if I didn't, they would not let me go the next time. And I think that's very much about learning natural consequences, that when you do what you're asked to do, or you do maybe the right thing, then generally you'll be able to do that again. So mostly I was, my consequence for not coming back on time would be either having to come back early the next time or not being able to go at all. So I always did the right thing. So when I now had 4 children of my own, and they now range from 35 to 40. So I met and married my husband, who's now my ex-husband.
Yes.
But we had 23 years of living together. He worked away a lot. I was very much a single parent a lot of the time. And at that time, I was on my own with 3 children, 3 girls, and I really wanted to keep my family connected and be together. So with my husband and my 3 girls, we went out to live in the Flinders Ranges, in the northern Flinders Ranges, and we lived in a situation where we had no running water, no electricity, and we were probably 60 kilometres from the nearest person. Wow. So that again is another thing that has very much influenced my parenting and my experiences, because knowing that you can live in very harsh and difficult circumstances but still have that strong connection and relationship with your children. And I know sometimes if people are involved here with the child protection system, people who've lived a life of quite comfort and not luxury, but, with their own home and sense of belonging and material things, it's difficult for them to understand sometimes that people can live in quite minimalistic circumstances and their children can still be happy and well and safe. And I think that's my daughter recently, she's an artist, and she's actually written a story about remembering when she was 7 there. And when I read it, a few things were not quite right, but it made me realise so much that those living conditions overall made all my daughters strong and resilient. And now as their parents, because now I have 9 grandchildren from my 4 grandchildren, are recognising that their learning has come from me. They've been able to see what we went through as a young mum, and now that they can relate that to their own children, and realising that, you can pretty well do anything if you set your mind.
Absolutely. Wow.
I think I'm going off the track a lot here, but my main point, I think, is really about connection, love, and belonging, and especially now coming back to people who are coming to Australia, migrant families, especially multicultural families. It's so difficult to come, not only, you're leaving your family, leaving country behind, but you're coming to a strange place where they have different rules, different ways of doing, different expectations.
Yeah.
And I think we have a very much individualistic culture here, which I think is getting worse over time, more individualistic. And it's really, really important for people, primarily, especially mums and young mums, to find their people. Wherever you live in the community, you need to, and sometimes it can be a bit scary, but there will always be some way that you can reach out and connect. And it does take time, but build your own little community that can, because support is so, so important for mums. And I keep saying mums, but for dads as well. But I know often the men are off doing work, and often the women are too. And there's so many expectations now on parents. And I think that's why today that parents have a different way of managing and working with their children, because to some extent they don't have a lot of time to spend with them. And when they do have time to spend with them, they don't want to sort of tell them off or stop them from doing anything, or they want to make them happy, and they also want to make themselves happy, because spending time with your children is great.
Yes.
But I think we need to bring it back another step, because we really need to look after ourselves first. And we can't look after and care for our children if we're exhausted and tired, which we will be. And I think then it comes down to, again, people are starting to look on social media and seeing all these influencers doing all these like wonderful parenting things, which they can't possibly do that in real life. That's only on their good days, or they've actually made that little video 10 times before it's been perfect. Like, we all have good days, but we all have not so good days as well. And I think, you hear people say, I know my daughter doesn't like her children having too much screen time. But when you start to make screen time, try to manage it, the children become more determined that they want to have it, because it seems like it's something more important. It's something significant. Or I tell you, when I had my children, we didn't really have screens at that time, but we had TV. People say, oh, children shouldn't watch too much TV, blah, blah, blah. But sometimes for children to watch TV, appropriate TV, gives
Yeah.
you the opportunity to clean up, wash your dishes, have a shower, depending on the age, obviously.
Yes.
So sometimes it's important, you can't monitor and manage all the time and be keeping on finding activities and things for your children to do, because you'll get exhausted. And that's what's happened with my grandchildren here. I've had them 2 here on the weekend, one's 9 and one's 4. They like to watch a movie or a show, but when it's a hot day, you don't really want them to be watching TV or shows all day long. But it's hard to find, they might do some colouring in, we might do some crafts or some cooking, but there's only so many hours or that you can contribute to your children 24 hours a day. You would just get totally drained and exhausted. So I think, and this comes back again to parenting, and I think from starting from birth, really, it's so important that you start to build your routines, set your boundaries for your children, encourage them to learn and engage with different and interesting things. A lot of the time, I think people think a lot of, financially, these things are expensive, that's expensive, but there's so many things that you can do that don't need money. So like for me, a big thing has always been getting out in nature, going to the park, going to the botanic gardens, going to the beach, collecting shells, collecting rocks, come home and make something with the shells or rocks. None of those things cost any money. They're just some time, and a special time that you can be engaging and doing things with your children. Planting the garden, that's another idea that children enjoy. So from a very small age, often if you've got 2 children, you've got one child that you might be feeding. It helps if you can take that time when you're feeding your child to maybe sit down with the other one and, have a look at a picture book or do something with them, so that, you're still all together. The other child's still feeling connected and not that the baby's taking over, and you're also having a rest.
Yes.
And again, things like that are really just, I guess, practice and having the idea that, hey, this is actually really good for me. I can lay down, my 2-year-old can sit here and hopefully fall asleep as well, and I can feed my baby at the same time.
Yes.
Because 2-year-olds can be very, very demanding.
Toddlers, yes, I understand.
Yeah.
Wow, so much wisdom in what you have said so far, and I love. There's so much that is coming to my mind, but I think I'll just take them one after the other. Starting with you highlighting how important it is to understand that living a minimalist life doesn't mean not enjoying and thriving, or it doesn't mean the lack of some resources to live much more abundantly is a disadvantage to being in alignment with the season of your life, enjoying nature, the natural things around you, the things that's, in fact, the things that seem small and intangible are actually like the most important things. Living, for one, I lived in a quiet small town, and I always wonder how people who live in bustling cities in the middle of the city, I don't know how they cope. I don't think I can do that. And so just living a country-like life is not a bad thing. And I picked on that. Thank you for sharing that. It also resonates with me when you said that looking back at the story your daughter writes, you were able to see how she has built resilience through the years because of the experiences she had as a child. And one thing I know that is important for us as parents to imbibe in our children is resilient skills. Because today, a lot of children, they call this generation the Indomie generation. They call Indomie generation because of the word instant in Indomie, because they like everything to be quick and easy and instant. And if you're going to build resilience, you have to learn to delay gratification. You learn to endure through tough tasks. And it's just so soothing to hear that you also know that there is a place for building resilient skills in honing individual skills, independent skills in your children, no matter where, even if you're living in the middle of a city and you have everything that life can afford, I just see that maybe it means that a lot of parents need to pay more attention to finding ways to build resilient skills and not always providing everything the children ask for,
Yeah.
because it robs them of. What do you think? Do you think like parents, because one common thing you would hear parents say is, I am moving abroad, especially with those ones who come on skilled migration, will tell you, I'm moving abroad to provide a better opportunity for my children so they do not suffer what I suffered. And by suffering, they mean, living a minimalist lifestyle, not having all the flamboyant things of life. What do you really think is the key component of raising resilient children in today's generation?
Yeah. And I think, like I said, like you mentioned, my daughter, children actually, to some degree, learn resilience through observing and seeing their parents, how their parent. And I think with me, so I would say that I'm a resilient person. I mean, I didn't even know what resilience was, but now, and I look back and I can see, I saw my mum and dad at a very young age travel over to Australia on a boat with 6 children, all under, and come to a new country, find a home, and all those kind of things. And so when, as a parent, you come up against difficulties or situations that you need to think about, that can inform your decision making. You look what my mum and dad did. They did this. Nothing is, impossible. But I think it's the attitude that you take.
True.
Like what we're saying with young children, I think today people don't let children make their own decisions. Obviously, they can't make a decision that they're just going to run across the road or something like that. But say, for example, with their clothes, some parents are so specific with their children's clothes. You must wear this, put this on, neat, tidy, clean. But children, even from 2, can have a choice of what clothes they're going to wear.
True.
And, some can even almost put some bits and pieces of their clothes on, but it comes from starting from very small choices.
Yes.
But not to the extent where they take control over the situation, but where they still have a choice. Same as with their food. They don't get to, like, I don't want that, so you get something else, and then they don't want that, and they don't want that. But I think they still have a choice. You can have this or this, not what would you like to eat, because they often really don't know. But if they've got 1 or 2 choices, so they're learning to make a decision.
True. Yes.
Whether it's their clothes. So same as with their toys. Sometimes you go to some houses and there's so many thousands of dollars worth of toys and nobody plays with them. Or they just tip them all over the whole floor and then mum's got to go and pick them up. So, even on a day-to-day, you can have a choice of what toys do you want to play with today? Okay, yes. So when you finish playing with your toys, I can help you pick them up, and as they get a little bit older, they start to understand, they've got to pack their toys away, and eventually mum doesn't have to help them because they just do it automatically, because mum or dad has taught them how to do that. So you need to model things naturally. And I think I've heard you talk about natural consequences, because those little eyes are watching us all the time. Every single thing that we do, the children are watching. So if they're doing something that's not quite right, you must think about, where did they see that, or where did they hear that? If they pop out a swear word or something when they're in the shops or things like that. So I do think it comes very much down to who we are, how we see ourselves, which then again leads to, often when you've had a new baby, you can experience a little bit of postnatal depression or something like that. Yes. So you're not really seeing yourself in a really positive light, and that's natural, and it's really hard, especially if you don't have your family or your parents or friends around. So that's why, again, it's important to really keep thinking about yourself. And if you're not feeling 100% or things just don't seem right, there's the doctors or the health nurses that you can have a talk to. It's important to be able to feel comfortable to ask questions of people that are really there to help.
Yes.
Some of them maybe don't have always the same ideas as what we have, and one of the things I did want to mention was around co-sleeping, because in Australia, in the health nursing sort of situation, they will often say that people shouldn't co-sleep with their with the children. I slept co-sleep with my children. I used to put them to bed in the cot. When they woke up, I would bring them in my bed and feed them, and then I would fall asleep. It's easy to say most cultures in the world co-sleep with their children.
True.
But it needs to be, I think the biggest thing around that aspect is about, again, safety. So if perhaps you're a really heavy sleeper, or if you had a really high bed that the baby could fall out of if you were asleep, or if sometimes people might have had maybe drink too much alcohol. There's situations where you really probably shouldn't co-sleep. But I think for babies, they want to be close. They want to be near their parents. So I'm not sure what your thoughts on that are, or if you've heard people talking about it. But it can be a bit of a contentious issue. But I think ultimately you have to consider the safety aspect of it. Yes. And a case-by-case situation basis.
Yeah. I like that you highlighted the co-sleeping, because for us, we believe so much in the power of touch. We believe in rocking the children on our own palms. We believe in carrying the children as mothers on our back because of the warmth, and we believe it's a form of bonding for us and the children. So yes, even in our culture, different from how children are carried in Australia, it's different. We believe in backing the children. We use wrappers, and even here, I've seen African parents who still do that, because we believe that it's a powerful way to bond, and the child can hear the rhythm of your heart. The child can know your smell, your body, how your body, the child can recognize your voice. Mothers sing while rocking the baby. Although there are different opinions about that, but I feel that, just like you have highlighted with the co-sleeping, it is powerful to actually create that atmosphere where the child feels safe. And there's even a neuroscience aspect to the power of touch in children. There was something you actually mentioned about discipline. Can we touch on that a little? The way you were raised, you were never spanked. You can only remember one situation. And I want you to not spanking children. I think there was a place that also talked about how trauma as a way of shrinking the brain of children when looked at when physical punishments are used, it can be traumatic on children.
I think, though, there's physical punishment and there's physical punishment. Like there's beatings. Again, they say even, smack shouldn't be right. But I mean, if we're thinking on a child protection context where you might have the children and child protection, where they might become involved, would be if there was information that the child had been excessively hit, bruised, and also their emotional, if they went to school and were howling and going, my dad or my mum, big sister or whatever, really, smacked me. They're the kind of instances that would potentially be looked into further. Now, I know there is the attachment. I think there's to have it depends, each child is different. So one child might have a significant smack in their life or a beating, and it may not have that impact. And there'll be a lot of parents like that I have visited in my work, or people that I know that say, well, I was belted when I was a child and it didn't affect me in any way. But then, which maybe it didn't, but then there's other children that it significantly can have a long-lasting effect. And the other thing is,
understand.
The other thing is, for those people who say, well, it didn't affect me when I was a child, they're then more likely to perhaps use the same kind of punishment or treatment for their own child, who may have a totally different reaction to it. But it can be it's very physically harming and emotionally harming. I think sometimes, kids will say, oh, that didn't even hurt. Might not have hurt them physically, but it hurt their feelings inside. And that can be even more significant if that happens over and over and over. over gain. And children can become fearful of their parents.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that they're going to stop doing the things them into trouble in the first place. So I think that comes back to, like I said, right, very, from the beginning of birth, when they start, sitting up, being one, it's about teaching those boundaries,
Yes.
reinforcing those boundaries to keep children safe. But some children they're just more strong-willed and they're going to do things differently.
Yes.
Some children who may have a disability, again, that can be much harder to parent, and it takes a lot more energy and a lot more time, and can be a lot more stressful. And it's well known that parents have a lot more difficulty parenting children with a disability, and often they can be more likely to become involved with the child protection system because they're just overwhelmed with everything. Yeah. So I've gone off a little bit of my gear.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. It's very important to mention that the emotional well-being of children is as important as their physical well-being. We have strong-willed children that may be adamant on going in their own way because they want to be independent more quicker than maybe their parents think they are ready for. And sometimes that power struggle between do it my way and I want to do it my own way for the child can, make a parent decide that this is how I want to discipline you. But hollering at children, hitting children is unacceptable when it harms them. Whatever we psychologically, emotionally, or physically, or verbally even harm any child should be done away with.
And it's best not to use physical discipline. And I think today, it's very much less likely to happen than in the past. The times when I think people might lash out with a quick smack or something is when they've reached their level of stress. So, for example, I think we have to practice saying no to our children. We say no. We don't, even from 2, you don't argue. You can even walk away, obviously, not if you're outside on the road or anything, but it's not a discussion. The answer is no. True. Because it's not safe or because we have to do this, or, you can give them a reason. True. But not to engage it, because once you start giving in to those tantrum or even just whinging or whining or it will continue. And the older they get, the stronger they will get, the longer they will keep going. And what do we tend to do? We go, oh, yes, for goodness sake, you can do it. Rather than sticking and saying, no, we can't do it today. Maybe we can do it another day or whatever.
Powerful.
And I would say for myself, for my children, I think they were reasonably well-behaved children. They probably did things that I didn't necessarily know about, but they didn't argue excessively or things like that. But when they got to teenagers, they were very strong-willed. And because if I had my time again, I would be stronger and stricter. And it brings it back to what I was saying about myself. As a child, I did what I thought was right. I did what my parents asked me most of the time. So I assumed that my children would be the same, that they would be that. I guess then that was before I had any understanding of child development or anything like that. Like, I haven't been a mum of teenagers before, and all of a sudden they're teenagers. And I think we get lots and lots of information about babies in the first years and second years, but no one really tells you about the teenagers when it comes to that point. And I think that's the hardest part. And I think it can be made easier by having those boundaries, consequences, natural consequences from the early ages. So they build up that respect, and I guess they have confidence. They know that, what they're able to do, what they're trusted to do. So, I think that would be my one thing that I have said before I would change. I would be stricter.
I'm so grateful that you're vulnerable enough to write that, and I hope that many parents watching this can actually pay attention to the truth that you've just said now. I know a lot of parents dread the teenage years as it approaches because of myths around how difficult it can be, but it's just like every other stage of growing up. It's just a different stage. And sometimes when something is different and you do not know so much about how to navigate it, it can be tougher. And you have just mentioned that setting boundaries, paying attention to what you value as a family, being able to support them. Thank you for, emphasizing that. And for me, I think because the teenage years come with discovery, the teenagers are trying to know themselves better. What are they capable of? Who are they? They're trying to understand themselves because so many even psychological bodily changes are going on for them. So there's a bit of confusion for them too. They are in between childhood and adulthood and they're trying to navigate it all. I love that you have said that there is a place for your decisions, but does did do you think that learning about the difficulties and preparing by reading, taking courses, looking out for resources, communities that can actually help on your parental journey is key? Do you think that parents of this age and time should seek for knowledge? I know that you have to take out what will work for your
Yeah,
family,
yeah.
but at the same time, should we read? Should we listen to podcasts? Should we listen to older women who have experiences?
That's a hard question, because especially when you're saying should we listen to older women who have experiences, that so for myself, so I have my experiences, but then when I look at young mothers today, they're living in a totally different world and experiences than what
Yeah.
I lived in. And it's easy to say, oh, we couldn't do this, we couldn't do that. What I do sometimes is I think about, I can remember my mum and dad looking after my children, their grandchildren, and they probably had the same kind of things. It's, oh, they just need a good telling off. Or I think each generation changes. I do think this is an extremely difficult generation, not just for the children, but for parents. Because like I said before, even going back to the internet and the social media, there's so much misinformation. There's so much that's not true, perhaps. There's so much that might work for one family that's not going to work for another family. And I think if you're trying to be something that's not true to yourself and to what you believe family is, it's not going to work. I think for me, family is my core value. I don't know if that comes across, but it has been. And I think things like we've in my family, with my parents, with my children, and even now when my grandchildren come, one simple thing we always do is we always sit to the table to eat our dinner. Everybody has to sit there, even the little, and it's hard sometimes because they still can't use a knife and fork, and they want to use their fingers, and that's all fine. But it's about that family connect and learning, even just, basic social things that you learn, so you can take your children out to go out for dinner somewhere, or you can do things like that. But it brings the family together at the end of the day, and it builds those connections. It's generally the only time that everyone in the family is together, and no
Yeah.
TV, no nothing. Sit to the table, share your dinner. Saying to my grandchildren the other day, little one, she's 4, she said, "Can I have an ice cream, Nanny?" And I said, "You have to finish your dinner first." So she said, "I've finished." I get down from the table. And I said, when I was a little girl, when I was with my mum and dad, we had to wait till everyone finished their dinner before we got down from the table. And I said, my mum, Nanny, was always the last finished because she was the one serving all the food and doing all the cooking. So we had to wait. So I was just sort of remembering my memories while I'm talking to my granddaughter who has, and I think, maybe those little stories that you tell them, they listen and they take that on. And, I think that's how things pass down as well. But we've got to do what's right for us. Otherwise, we're not going to be living the life that we want to live and the way that we want to live our life.
Wow.
That's one important thing. The other important thing I think that I was saying before is we don't need masses of toys and things. There's so much, if you're doing the washing and you've got your pegs, you can play, your children can play with the pegs. They can pass you the washing. They can put pegs in the different colours of, and need to go out and buy sorting blocks or something to do that. Cardboard box. You have a cardboard box and put a child in a cardboard box sitting down and they'll stay in it for hours. Get out your containers and some wooden spoons, and they've got musical instruments. You don't feel the necessity to have ranges, heaps. Also, toy library. If you want to have toys, you don't need to buy them. You can go to the library. So I think it's important also, going back to people new coming to the country, to know what resources are out there, what things are available, how you can get support, even for for help with food or different things like that. There's always times when someone's going to, maybe be short one week and need some extra support with the groceries, or so really finding out what's available in your community and feeling confident to use that and not having any shame or feeling that that's not what you should be doing.
Wow.
Because that's what, that's the society we should live in, the giving and sharing and feeling comfortable that we can do that, and not being fearful that we're not doing the right, the right thing by our children.
Yeah, so good. Thank you. I feel like you have touched on everything. I was like, what does it feel like to be a grandma? You've said so much. What does it feel like to be parenting adult children? Does anyone need to do anything special in terms of preparation in becoming a grandparent?
Look, two of my daughters had their first child when they were 18 years old. So they were actually, and their partners were actually lived with me. So I was very much in my, which may be very similar to other cultures as well. We all sort of lived together right from the start. So they had, my eldest daughter, who's now 40, so she had her brothers and sisters and myself, and all helping her with her baby. So she had all those people around, and I think when they were young, it's a bit different, because I still felt that my daughters were still very young, but as they've grown and they're older, it can be hard, because you need to be very careful what you say to your own daughter, because they're doing the best job that they can. They're also doing the job that parenting like they believe that they want to parent, which may not be the way that you think. The hard thing is when you see the children being disrespectful for the parent, or things like making their life difficult by, throwing toys everywhere or food on the floor or whatever. Then you have to think back to what I was saying before, but those are the things that the boundaries that the parents need to set. So it's like you're making your own, and because it's hard, sometimes mums just want to do every single thing for their children, and like I said before, you can't do it. Eventually you crash and burn. But with it, I know friends of mine that are grandparents. I was a grandmother when I was like 45, so I was really only still quite young. Some don't become a grandparent till they're 65, which is my age now, and they're retired, so they've got all their time to be supporting their children, helping out while they go to work, doing all those things. And people are so fortunate to have that grandparents like that. I haven't been, I guess I did a lot when I was a young grandparent. I helped because I had the babies and that living at home. And now as the children have gotten older, they're all living interstate, except for the two that are here. It is a special relationship. I love all my grandchildren. My eldest one is 22 and my youngest one is 2. And so I've pretty well been able to be with wherever my daughters are. I've pretty well been there with every single one of those children was born. Not necessarily at the birth, although I was at a couple of the births. So I think, being able to have that connection from when the children are born is really big. Same as my parents, they were around when all my children were born. And I think that another thing that's hard for people when you're living far away from parents and family, that that's the time when you do notice and you do miss it and you appreciate it. And even they might not be doing much, they're actually just there.
Yeah.
They're there.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah, I think I learned my lesson. One time I gave my opinion to one of my daughters and she didn't talk to me for 6 months. So then
Wow.
I realized, I need to think about how I say things and say them. And she apologized. We apologized to each other. But,
Wow.
when people are doing the best they can and it's a hard job, it's not, you have to be really thoughtful of how you approach things, if you think things might
Yeah.
be helpful if they're a little bit different.
Wow. It sounds like you've really had a very unique and interesting, special journey. And it's an enviable one. I really admire your boldness, your strength, your generosity, your wisdom, and I think your humility to really acknowledge that whatever would have made this young woman not to, keep in touch, talking to me for 6 months must have really been important to her. It takes humility to, especially because you're the mother. Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your kind words. You're too kind.
Well, I'm speaking from what I'm hearing you say, which are the fundamental truths that sometimes we forget that we are on a journey of learning in life and just being able to adapt to and being flexible with the times and acknowledging and saying times are different, things are different, things are changing, and just learning what can I do to make life better for the people around me, how can I support them in the way they will feel supported. I think it's a strong strength. It's something enviable, something I
But you
admire.
need to be supported too. So to be able to give all that support to everyone, you, like I said, you need to find your people, your tribe, and whether that's, there's play groups.
Yes.
My daughter lived in Tasmania, and they formed a very strong bond. I think it might have been when parents are having the childbirthing exercises, and when each one of them had their baby, a whole group of people, maybe 8 or 10 people, cooked all these meals for them to put into the freezer to have the fridge. But that there are people here in Australia that are very community conscious and minded. But if you can't find one, then build one. Bring the people together. I think you're doing that in some way through what you're doing. You're building people to get through your podcast. And that some of those people might never meet each other. But again, it's still a community of people that are wanting to grow and learn. And I think it's a great thing.
Thank you so much. The way we raise ourselves in Africa, we say it takes a village to raise a child. So back in Nigeria, what that means is our neighbors, more or less like parents to our children, the extended family come together when someone gives birth. We have a system in one part of generally most Nigerian culture. So we call it the Omugo system. So the omugwo system is where when a woman gives birth, her parents, because she's now in her own husband's house or presumed, most times the parents come. So it could be the father or the mother, depending on who is disposed at the time, but usually it's the mothers. But now fathers are also being considered because a lot of times it looks like fathers are always being left out of the reward or the
Yeah.
outcome of parenting. And it can be a whole different conversation. It's just that
Yeah.
I believe that it's important to acknowledge that fathers are very important and
Absolutely.
yes, they also play that part. But when you are here in Australia and you have, people of like minds, they
Yeah.
become
Yeah.
your
Like.
family.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
become your family.
And I
Yes.
think that's really key. And like I said, sometimes I've moved around a lot. I don't know how. Before I grew up in Adelaide, but I lived in Queensland and I've worked in different places, so I've moved around a lot. But I've always tried to find like-minded people, and sometimes that can be through like yoga or through meditation, or it can be through. When I was in Cooktown, I became the secretary of the art gallery just so I could meet people. Like you can do there's loads of different ways of meeting. Or you can even go down to the local park and sit there and you're sure to meet people eventually.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Whew, so much wisdom packed in one whole
I feel
podcast.
like it's
I'm so grateful. I love the trajectory of our discussion. It's touched on all the key things I was looking forward to hear you say. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. All the insights are very practical, and I believe these are the things that when implemented would enhance parents' journey. And you poured out from your heart. Thank you so much, Carol.
I
Thank you.
think that's what I have. I really just really talked about myself, I guess, in a lot of ways. And I would, if there's any specific topic like play or, you know, cooking or whatever, I mean, we'd be happy to talk on anything like that specifically. But I think this is just very general. It's been a long journey, and I hope it continues because it's fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. Just know that I'm going to keep in touch. So before we leave, I usually believe that there is one key word that you want parents to keep in their minds as a central message that you might have for someone here today. What would that be?
Love. I think.
So let's all keep spreading love within our families. I have always believed that family is the bedrock of the society, and love should be the foundation within the family. Thank you so much for sharing that. I thank you for your time. Make sure you subscribe to this channel because there's so much value that we are providing here. And all my guests have invested time just so that they can, add to the story of your life and make the world a better place. So please support us by subscribing, and I'll see you again next time. Bye. Bye, everyone. Thank you, Carol.